Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. What if I told you that a woman who helped prosecute some of the biggest corporate criminals in American history, who advised the President of the United States, who sat at the highest legal seat inside one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, lost it all, not because she broke the law, not because she was charged with a crime, but because of emails, flowers, and a watch? This is the story of Kathryn Ruemmler and how her connection to Jeffrey Epstein became one of the most expensive associations in modern corporate America, not just emotionally, not just reputationally, but financially. And the deeper question isn't just what happened, it's whether this was a simple professional miscalculation or a reminder that in America's power structure, perception is everything. To understand the fall, you have to understand the rise. Long before the headlines and resignation letters, Kathryn Ruemmler was the definition of elite legal success. She built her reputation the old-fashioned way, by winning. As a federal prosecutor, she was part of the team that took on executives from Enron, including Ken Lay and Jeffrey Skilling. And if you remember early 2000s America, you remember what Enron meant. It wasn't just a company collapsing. It was pensions evaporating. It was retirement accounts wiped out. It was middle-class families blindsided by corporate greed. Billions of dollars vanished, trust in corporate America shattered, and Ruemmler was on the prosecution side of history. That matters. Because in America, especially after Enron, prosecutors who held executives accountable became symbols of justice. She wasn't just another attorney, she was seen as someone willing to take on power. And that reputation followed her straight into the White House. Under Barack Obama, she became White House counsel. That's not just a legal advisor, that's the president's lawyer. The person in the room when constitutional questions arise, the person advising on executive authority, investigations, conflicts, national-level decisions. It's proximity to the highest office in the world. You don't get that job unless you're trusted, and you don't keep that job unless you're sharp. By this point, her resume wasn't just impressive, it was powerful. She was discussed in legal circles as a potential future attorney general. That's how high she was flying. Washington respected her, legal insiders respected her. Her career arc looked unstoppable. Then she made the move many top government officials eventually make. She crossed over to Wall Street, and not just any firm. She joined Goldman Sachs. Now let's be clear about something. Goldman Sachs isn't just another financial institution, it's Wall Street royalty. It's the kind of firm whose alumni populate treasury departments and global finance ministries. When Goldman moves, markets pay attention. When Goldman hires, industries notice. And when you become general counsel at Goldman Sachs, you're not just holding a legal title, you're sitting at the intersection of law, finance, politics, and global risk. That role comes with serious money, seven-figure base salary, multi-million-dollar bonuses, long-term stock grants that can accumulate into generational wealth. Over the course of a decade, someone in that position could easily see $20, $30, even $50 million in total compensation and equity growth. That's not just income, that's legacy-building capital. Everything in her career trajectory pointed upward. Federal prosecutor, White House counsel, Wall Street legal chief. It was the perfect American power story, until one name resurfaced in a way that changed everything: Jeffrey Epstein. By 2008, Epstein had already pleaded guilty to sex crimes involving minors. He registered as a sex offender. His name was known. His reputation was deeply controversial. But even after that conviction, he continued to maintain connections in elite circles, financiers, academics, politicians, billionaires. And after his conviction, Kathryn Ruemmler provided legal advice to him. Now here's where nuance matters. Representing a controversial client is not illegal. Lawyers represent criminals. That's part of the justice system. It doesn't mean endorsement. It doesn't mean friendship. It doesn't mean alignment. Legally speaking, advising someone like Epstein wasn't a crime. But law and optics are not the same thing. Years later, emails surfaced, communications that showed warmth, familiar tone, exchanges that didn't read like cold billing statements, and then came the gifts. Reports documented that Epstein sent her luxury items and gestures, spa treatments, designer handbags from Hermes, a coat from Fendi, an Apple Watch, flowers. On the surface, none of these items individually scream scandal, but context changes everything. Hermes handbags can cost $10,000, $20,000, even $40,000 depending on the model. Fendi outerwear runs in the thousands. Luxury spa treatments, high-end packages can run thousands more. In elite corporate culture, gifts are signals. They signal closeness, they signal access, they imply relationship depth. And when you're the top lawyer at Goldman Sachs, even the appearance of special access to a convicted sex offender creates reputational exposure. Then 2019 happened. Federal authorities arrested Epstein again, this time on sweeping federal sex trafficking charges. The story exploded across national media, public outrage surged, and then he died in jail. The controversy intensified, investigations widened, journalists began examining every relationship, every flight log, every email, every association. Suddenly, proximity to Epstein wasn't a footnote, it was a headline. Internal questions reportedly began surfacing at Goldman Sachs, not necessarily about legality, but about judgment. And on Wall Street, judgment is currency. Because institutions like Goldman Sachs don't just trade in dollars, they trade in trust. And trust impacts valuation. Valuation impacts shareholder confidence. Shareholder confidence impacts stock price. Stock price impacts billions. Even if nothing illegal occurred, perception alone can destabilize confidence. Eventually, she resigned from Goldman Sachs. No dramatic courtroom scene, no indictment, no criminal conviction, just a resignation. But make no mistake, at that level, resignation is expensive. When a top executive leaves under controversy, they don't just lose a paycheck, they potentially lose unvested stock awards, future bonus cycles, board seats, advisory roles, political influence, media opportunities. Over the course of a lifetime, that can represent tens of millions of dollars in foregone opportunity. Reputation at that tier isn't just social capital, it's financial leverage. And here's the deeper layer. This story isn't just about one lawyer and one financier. It's about how power ecosystems work in America. Elite networks often overlap. Finance intersects with politics. Politics intersects with law. Law intersects with wealth. When you operate at the highest levels long enough, proximity can feel normalized. You start believing that you're insulated, that you're simply maintaining professional relationships, that your credibility protects you. But power doesn't erase risk, it magnifies it. And the higher you climb, the thinner the margin for reputational error becomes. So, what do we learn from this? First, your network is an asset, but it's also exposure. The same connections that elevate you can sink you. Second, legality is not immunity. Something can be fully legal and still devastate your career financially. Third, reputation compounds like interest. It takes decades to build. It can decline rapidly when confidence cracks. Fourth, optics matter, especially when billions of dollars are involved. Corporate America is hypersensitive to perception because perception moves markets. And finally, wealth and status do not shield you from consequences. In many cases, they amplify them. Imagine building a 25-year career across federal prosecution, the White House, and Wall Street, only to watch it unravel because of association, not because of embezzlement, not because of fraud, because in America's power culture, who you stand next to can redefine who you are. That's the uncomfortable truth at the center of this story. Success isn't just about intelligence or ambition, it's about risk management, social risk included. And sometimes the costliest mistakes aren't illegal decisions, they're relational ones. So here's the question you should be asking yourself tonight. If someone audited your network, would it strengthen your future or threaten it? Because in the world of money, power, and reputation, proximity is never neutral.